Wife cheated and left me for her friend 5 years ago. Now wants me back because he dumped her. I'm a 59-year-old man, and about 4 years ago I went through something really tough. My wife Evelyn, who was 49 at the time, and I ended up getting a divorce. We had been married for 12 years and had two amazing children together, who are now 14 and 11 years old. Evelyn was actually my second wife. My first marriage was to my high school sweetheart, the first love of my life. We had a beautiful bond, but tragically she passed away in an accident. We didn't have any kids, which made it even harder because it felt like I lost my entire world with her. After she died, I was completely lost. I was in my early 40s and suddenly found myself without a clue about what to do with my life. I was drowning in my grief, and I turned to drinking and some other destructive behaviors just to cope with the pain. Now, as I step into my 60s, I'm trying to look at things with a sense of gratitude and grace. Despite the tough times and the dark patches, I've somehow managed to keep going. I run a modest real estate business, which helps keep me grounded and provides a structure to my days. Life has definitely thrown its fair share of challenges at me, but I'm learning to navigate through them with a bit more wisdom and a lot of reflection. Looking back, my love life has indeed been filled with more downs than ups, but each experience has taught me something important. Even though I've faced heartbreaking losses and the deep betrayal of a broken marriage, these experiences have shaped who I am today. I'm now focusing on living my life with a bit more purpose and a lot more hope. Then I met Mila at a bar. She was there with a college friend, both of them nursing their own heartbreaks, and somehow we just clicked. I won't sugarcoat it. I was in a pretty bad place myself, still feeling the sting from my past, and really just needed someone to lean on. I became emotionally attached to Mila pretty quickly. After about a year of dating, she was the one who brought up marriage. Honestly, I can't even say if I was truly ready to get married again. But Mila was looking for commitment, and I didn't want to lose her, so I went along with it without overthinking. Mila was in her early 30s at that time and was very clear about wanting to settle down. She had recently ended things with her friend. They had a sort of friends with benefits arrangement. She developed feelings for him, but the feelings weren't mutual. After years of that going nowhere physical relationship, she was ready to move on for good. So when Mila told me it was either marriage or nothing, I just couldn't risk losing someone again. I agreed to the marriage, hoping that this time things would turn out better. So we had a small wedding ceremony, just us and a few close people. At that time, getting married felt like the right thing to do. Maybe it sounds silly, but I don't actually regret it. With Evelyn, life was pretty good for a while. We traveled a bunch before we had kids, and even after they were born, we managed to keep things stable for 12 years. But then, everything changed when an old friend of hers, someone she had been involved with before, came back into her life. Evelyn ended up leaving me for him and we got divorced. I got custody of our kids, and since then, I've pretty much built my life around them. The reason I'm sharing all this now is that, out of the blue, Evelyn showed up last week wanting to be part of our lives again. When I opened the door and saw her there, I hardly recognized her at first. She looked worn out, really pale and sad, with red puffy eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She completely broke down when she saw me, clutching a letter and looking like something terrible had happened. It turns out it had. As soon as I opened the door, she threw her arms around me and started crying. I was taken aback and worried, so I asked her if she was okay. Between sobs, she kept saying sorry for leaving me. It was just the two of us at home since the kids were away at summer camp. After a while, she managed to calm down enough to explain what had happened. Her affair partner, the man she had left me for, had suddenly left her and gone back to his native country in the south of Europe. He left her nothing but a note that read, "I'm sorry, I can't marry you. I have a wife and children at home." It was a shock. This man had been leading a double life, taking advantage of Evelyn's feelings all this time. He kept her waiting for 4 years, never married her, and then just abandoned her. I didn't know how to feel about all this. Part of me felt a strange relief that he was gone, but seeing Evelyn so devastated made me sad for her, despite everything. It's a complicated mix of emotions to sort through. Karma seemed to have its say in the matter, but I didn't throw any hurtful words at her. Even though I felt sorry for her situation, I knew there wasn't much I could do to help. Evelyn told me I was her only hope. She believed I would forgive her and take her back because she knew me as a forgiving person. But I had to be honest with her. I told her that I had moved on and didn't harbor any harsh feelings, but I couldn't just let her walk back into my life as if nothing had happened. The truth is, I had already forgiven her once for cheating, but she repeated the mistake. She was deeply in love with her affair partner, to the point that she didn't think twice about leaving her own children behind for him. The only reason she stayed loyal to me during those 12 years was that her affair partner was out of the country. Now that he had abandoned her, she was looking to come back. But I couldn't let my life be upturned again by the same pattern. It was a tough stance to take, but necessary for my own well-being and that of our children. I told her that while I empathized with her situation, I couldn't trust her again. At that, she broke down once more, pleading for my forgiveness. I reassured her that I had already forgiven her, but forgiveness didn't mean things could go back to the way they were. I offered the possibility of her having joint custody of our children, if the kids were comfortable with it. That was as much as I was willing to compromise. She didn't want to leave, so eventually I had to be firm, more blunt than I liked, to make her understand she needed to go. I told her I had errands to run and that she needed to leave my house. Though she finally left, her visit left me feeling really unsettled. The last thing I want at this stage of my life is more drama. All I'm looking for now is peace. Continuing on with my life, focused on peace and stability, is my priority. I know that if I let her back into my life, the old patterns would likely repeat, and that's a risk I cannot take. It's tough, but I must stick to this path for the sake of my own well-being and that of our children. Now for the updates. Update 1. Hey everyone, thanks a ton for all the messages you've sent. Whether they were good, bad, or somewhere in between, I really appreciate you taking the time. Today, I'm going to fill you in on some backstory about what's been going on with me and Evelyn, especially since some of you asked for the details about how we ended up in this situation. So here's the scoop. Evelyn and I had a pretty good run. We were married for 12 years and things seemed smooth. We had 2 kids during that time, and Evelyn was both a great mom and a great wife. I never saw any warning signs that something was wrong. But then, out of the blue, an old flame of Evelyn's showed up back on the scene. This was the same guy she'd split up with a long time ago because he wasn't ready to commit. After their breakup, he had moved back to his home country, but now he was back in town, and suddenly Evelyn was seeing him again. At first, I didn't make a big deal about him dropping by occasionally. Evelyn told me she was over him, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We had been happy together for over a decade with no problems. But then one day, something odd happened. Evelyn came home and immediately locked herself in our room. That was the moment I started to feel that something wasn't right. The kids and I tried knocking on the door several times around dinner time to see if she would join us, but she didn't answer. I got worried, so I called her cell to check if she was okay. She texted back saying she was all right but needed a bit more time to herself. I didn't want to push her, so I left her alone and ended up sleeping on the couch in the living room. The next day she acted like everything was normal, but it was pretty clear that something was off. When I gently asked her what was wrong, she brushed it off, saying she'd had a minor argument with her sister, but it wasn't anything big, and she'd handle it. She didn't want to talk about it anymore, and I decided not to push her for more details. I also didn't feel right about snooping around or asking her sister because I'm not the type to meddle in their personal stuff. As time went by, though, it became obvious that the problem wasn't really about her sister. It was about this friend who had come back into her life. Before all this happened, Evelyn was pretty upbeat. She would often talk about this friend, even suggesting we invite him over for dinner and drinks. But then, after that night when she locked herself in the room, she suddenly stopped mentioning him altogether. Whenever I tried to bring him up in conversation, she would change the subject or just ignore my questions. Also, I knew Evelyn and her sister had their fair share of arguments in the past, but Evelyn was never this shaken up by them. It all seemed really strange. So I started to suspect something was up, even though it was just a gut feeling at first. Instead of sneaking around or trying to catch her out by gathering evidence, I decided to just ask her outright. I confronted her and asked if she had cheated on me with this friend. To my surprise, she admitted it. She didn't try to deny it or twist the situation. She just came clean and confessed that when this old flame came back into her life, she couldn't stop herself from seeing him again. It all began innocently enough, with them just meeting up as friends at public places. But then, they started catching up at his place, and before long, their old relationship was rekindled. I needed to know more, so I asked Evelyn if she still had feelings for him. She told me no, that it wasn't about love. She begged me for another chance, explaining that she got swept up in the moment. She admitted that it happened just once and that she felt incredibly guilty about it. She said the guilt was eating her up inside. Evelyn also told me that after that night, she stopped seeing the guy. She admitted that while she had loved him back when they were originally together, he never really respected her or her feelings, and he had just used her. As she told me all this, she broke down, promising she would never betray me again. After some thought, I decided to give her a second chance. Some might think I'm naive, but I believe in the power of forgiveness and the potential for people to change. I hoped with all my heart that she would keep her promise. Cheating is something I take very seriously, and it hurt me deeply when Evelyn admitted to it. Despite the pain, I wanted to keep our family together, especially for our children. Our youngest was only 4 years old at the time, and the thought of a divorce and potentially seeing my kids less was something I just couldn't handle. So I forgave Evelyn and decided to give our marriage another chance. But I made it very clear to her, any future betrayal, whether it was physical or just emotional, would be unacceptable. Evelyn agreed to these terms, and we began to rebuild our relationship. We started going out on date nights again and took some family vacations. Things seemed to be improving, and for a few months, everything appeared to be going smoothly. However, given what had happened, I was on high alert, more vigilant than before. When I started to notice some red flags again, I didn't ignore them like I might have in the past. She had betrayed my trust once, and I wasn't going to let my guard down this time. I was determined to address any suspicious signs immediately without letting them slide. It was about 4 years ago, so some of the finer details are a bit fuzzy now, but overall, I could tell something was off. Evelyn seemed distracted and wasn't spending as much time with me or the kids. At home, she was often in a bad mood, but I noticed that she would light up when texting someone or would giggle while talking on the phone. She seemed glued to her phone all the time and started avoiding any closeness with me, especially in bed. Her change in behavior was concerning. She was rarely in the mood for any intimacy, and this was a stark contrast to how she used to be. I decided to confront her about these changes directly, hoping for an honest conversation. However, she denied that anything was wrong. She became defensive and even tried to turn the situation around on me. She accused me of not trusting her and being overly watchful because she had cheated in the past. Realizing that arguing was getting us nowhere and that she wasn't going to admit anything willingly, I decided that I needed to find solid evidence of what was really going on. It was a difficult decision, but I felt it was the only way to get to the truth. After noticing Evelyn's unusual behavior, I decided to check her phone. It turned out she hadn't changed her password, which initially made me think maybe there was nothing to hide. However, when I looked through her messages, I did find some chats with her affair partner. But to my surprise, they were just normal conversations from months ago, around the time she had first cheated on me. There was nothing recent or incriminating in her phone that suggested they were still in contact. Before I had a chance to look for evidence elsewhere, Evelyn came to me and confessed. She told me she knew I had checked her phone and felt it was time to be completely honest. She explained that after our initial confrontation, she had tried to distance herself from him, but he didn't give up. He begged her to come back to him. Evelyn tried to avoid him, knowing it could cause more trouble in our marriage, but he was persistent. He reassured her that he truly loved her and promised they would get married. He just needed some time to sort out a few things first. This confession put me in a tough spot, as it was clear Evelyn was still being pulled back into a relationship with this man, despite her attempts to stay away. The situation was complicated, and her honesty about it left me with a lot to think about in terms of what to do next. Evelyn and her affair partner decided to keep their relationship quiet. She admitted to feeling guilty about cheating on me, but felt she couldn't pass up the chance to be with him, especially now that he was serious about their relationship. It became clear to me that she never truly stopped loving him. She had only suppressed her feelings because of his past reluctance to commit. Once he showed a genuine commitment, she found it impossible to stay away. Given the circumstances, Evelyn asked for a divorce and initially wanted custody of our children. However, when I expressed my desire to keep the children with me, she surprisingly agreed without much hesitation. This made me feel as if she was also trying to distance herself from the responsibilities of parenthood. She requested to see the children on a weekly basis, and I agreed, under the condition that she would be the one to explain the divorce to them. Evelyn spoke to the children, choosing to tell them that we were divorcing because we had fallen out of love. She avoided blaming me or portraying me negatively, which I appreciated for the sake of maintaining peace and stability for our kids. This approach helped us manage the delicate situation as respectfully as possible, considering the emotional impact on our children. The news of the divorce was really hard on the kids. There were a lot of tears, and they pleaded with us to try and make things work again. Hearing their cries and seeing their distress made me feel resentful towards Evelyn for putting us in this situation. But as time passed, I came to the realization that even if Evelyn changed her mind about the divorce, too much had happened for me to simply forgive and forget. Moving forward with the divorce seemed like the best choice for everyone involved. I made a promise to my children that I would continue to be a good father to them. They didn't doubt this, as I had always been actively involved in their lives, not just a parent who was around, but one who was truly present. Stepping into the role of a full-time single parent wasn't hard for me, given my previous involvement, but despite our efforts, the kids still missed their mom. Thankfully, we managed to settle the divorce amicably. I was deeply hurt by everything that had happened, but I didn't hold a grudge against Evelyn. Some might call it cowardice, others might say it was maturity, perhaps it was a bit of both, influenced by my experiences and age. But ultimately, I let her go because it was the necessary thing to do, not just for my own peace, but for our children's well-being too. The months following the divorce were particularly challenging, especially for the younger child. I did my best to lift their spirits, taking them on multiple vacations, trips, picnics, and engaging them in various activities to keep them happy and distracted from the upheaval in our family life. During this time, Evelyn continued to visit the children weekly, but eventually she moved to Alabama with her affair partner. By that point, both the children and I had begun to move on from the initial shock and pain of the divorce. Over the last 4 years, the children have grown into kind, resilient, and emotionally strong individuals. Initially, after Evelyn moved, the children would cling to her during her calls and clearly showed their resentment towards her. However, as time passed, they grew more forgiving and understanding, eventually reaching a point where they could interact with her cordially. Recently, when the children returned from their summer camp and learned about their mother's situation, her being abandoned by her affair partner, they didn't express much sympathy. They felt that she had made her choices and now had to live with the consequences. This response from them wasn't out of coldness, but rather a reflection of their growth and maturity, recognizing that each person is responsible for their actions and their impacts. When I discussed the idea of joint custody with the children, they were strongly against it. They expressed a real fear that if they went to live with Evelyn, she might abandon them again if her affair partner came back into the picture. Their reaction was rooted in the instability they had already experienced, and they didn't want to face the possibility of going through that pain again. I took the time to calm them down and reassured them that nothing would be decided without their full agreement. I wanted them to feel secure and heard, emphasizing that the ultimate decision lay with them. They made it clear they didn't want to leave my side, believing that their mom might repeat her past actions if given the opportunity. This situation was difficult, but it underscored the importance of listening to and respecting the feelings and wishes of my children in these complicated family dynamics. Their sense of security with me and their concerns about potentially unstable situations were my top priorities in navigating our new family arrangement. Update 2. Dealing with Evelyn has definitely taught me the importance of having a thick skin. Some people have commented calling me names. I'm not sure what to make of all the labels, but yes, I am certainly from an older generation. I'm 59 years old, and from my perspective, we don't chase after someone relentlessly or try to force love. If someone decides they don't love us anymore, we let them go with dignity. That said, letting go doesn't mean letting someone walk all over us. There's a balance to maintain, and it's important to stand up for oneself without harboring negative feelings. I appreciate all the comments, even the critical ones, but I wanted to explain things from the perspective of someone who might be considered old school. Recently, Evelyn came to visit again while the kids were home from school. They were quite shocked to see her, which caused a bit of an initial uproar. I reminded them to stay polite and respectful. They managed to talk with her for a bit, but soon excused themselves and went back to their rooms. It's a challenging situation, but we're managing it as best we can, always trying to maintain respect and decorum, even under stress. When Evelyn asked me about the possibility of getting back together, I was clear with her. Reconciliation was definitely not an option for us. I also informed her that the children were not interested in living with her, although I mentioned that she was welcome to try and convince them otherwise if she felt strongly about it. Honestly, I suspect that she doesn't truly want to take on the responsibility of having the children with her full time. She confirmed my suspicions somewhat when she admitted that she couldn't afford to have the children stay with her. Evelyn explained that she was currently living on a friend's couch and that her housing situation was unstable. Her friend could ask her to leave at any moment. I was aware that her financial situation wasn't great, but I hadn't realized just how dire things had become. Before we were married, Evelyn worked as a receptionist, but she left her job shortly after our marriage. I had done my best to provide a good life for her during our time together. This latest conversation just reaffirmed the complex layers of our current circumstances, highlighting both the practical and emotional challenges we face as we navigate this new phase of our lives separately. During the divorce, Evelyn was compensated fairly, receiving a decent amount of money as part of the settlement. Curious about how she managed her finances, I asked her what she did with that money. She told me that she had given it to her former partner to help him with his business. Moreover, she had taken on 2 jobs to support their household in Alabama, showing her commitment to their life together. Unfortunately, despite her sacrifices, the affair partner left her and took all of their savings with him, leaving her with only the money she had wisely kept hidden from him. She used this hidden stash to pay for her travel back home and had been surviving on it since then. Seeing her struggle, I offered to lend her money to rent a condo and help her get her life back on track, but she declined. She explained that her decisions were driven by her search for love, not money. She emphasized that if money had been her priority, she would have never left the stable life she had with me to be with someone who was financially unstable. This response highlighted the complexities of her motivations and the difficulties she faced in her pursuit of happiness, which unfortunately led to more hardship than fulfillment. Evelyn expressed a desire to live with us again, as if we could be a family like before, but that simply wasn't feasible. Although part of me does feel sorry for her, given her circumstances, the reality is that there just isn't a place for her in our household anymore. To help her get back on her feet, I wrote her a check to assist with renting a house and encouraged her to find a job. I also suggested that she consider therapy, which could be beneficial given everything she's been through. I've always emphasized to my children the importance of being kind to their mother, reminding them that she is, after all, the woman who brought them into the world. They've been gentle and polite with her, but they've made it clear that they do not want to reintegrate her into their lives in a significant way. Occasionally, Evelyn texts me, questioning whether she deserves the help she's receiving. It's a difficult question to answer. While she has made significant mistakes that affected not just me, but our children, it's hard not to feel some compassion for her current plight. Navigating these complex family dynamics continues to be challenging, but my priority remains clear: to support my children and ensure they feel secure, while also extending a reasonable level of kindness and support to Evelyn, despite our past. Update 3. Thanks everyone for the kind words on my last posts. It's been a while since my last update because life was pretty much going in circles with Evelyn. Her occasional unexpected visits, emotional breakdowns, and pleas for us to get back together were becoming a repetitive pattern. However, something new has unfolded over the last 6 months that's added a bit of complexity to my family dynamics. This change actually started to brew about 1.5 to 2 years ago, before Evelyn re-entered our lives in such a dramatic way. I met a woman. Let's call her Isabella. She's 62 years old and owns a charming flower boutique. Despite her age, she has the energy of someone in their 30s. We started off as just friends, but after spending a year getting to know her, I found myself really enjoying her company. I now spend many of my evenings and weekends at her shop, helping her with various tasks. What I really admire about Isabella is how she handles everything with such independence and grace. This developing relationship with Isabella has brought some new perspectives and positivity into my life, contrasting significantly with the ongoing struggles and emotional turmoil associated with Evelyn. It's refreshing to engage with someone who is so capable and lively, and it's clear that this new connection is becoming an important part of my life. Isabella has had her own share of challenges. She lost her husband early on and took on the responsibility of raising 3 kids all by herself. Now that her children are grown and have moved out, her flower boutique not only serves as a source of income, but also as a passion that fills her days. Being around her, I feel a renewed sense of vitality and purpose. I haven't brought up Isabella in this thread or mentioned her to Evelyn, mainly because I don't want it to seem like my reluctance to reconcile with Evelyn is due to my relationship with Isabella. The truth is, my connection with Isabella isn't about replacing Evelyn or moving towards another marriage. It's really about companionship. 2 people in their 60s, appreciating what life has to offer at this stage, without the desire for drama or deep commitments. My children are aware of Isabella, and they're genuinely happy that I have someone with whom I can share my thoughts and feelings. They appreciate seeing me upbeat and engaged in life again. My oldest child is graduating high school this year, and the younger one will soon be off to high school or college. As they're moving towards more independent phases of their lives, it's comforting to have someone like Isabella to spend time with. It's a simple, joyful companionship that enriches my life, allowing me to enjoy these later years with someone who understands the value of peace and happiness. Having Isabella as a friend to share thoughts with has indeed been invaluable. As we age, finding companions who understand and share in our experiences can make a significant difference in our well-being. I've been open with Isabella about Evelyn's visits, and she has responded with nothing but empathy and support, which I greatly appreciate. However, this situation took an uncomfortable turn recently. Evelyn saw me at Isabella's shop one evening. I didn't notice her at first, but her presence became apparent when I saw her observing us. It seems she had been following my routine because she had also noticed that I was spending my evenings at Isabella's place, sometimes even staying overnight. On one occasion, as I was leaving Isabella's shop, Evelyn confronted me quite aggressively, asking if Isabella was the reason I wasn't returning to her. I was taken aback by her accusation. It was painful to hear her suggest that my friendship with Isabella was in any way comparable to her past actions. I tried to calm the situation, but Evelyn crossed several boundaries with her words, and I felt compelled to stand up for myself. She had cheated on me twice and had walked away from her responsibilities as a mother, yet she was questioning my integrity based on a simple, honest friendship. In the heat of the moment, she even insulted Isabella. In contrast to the chaos and hurt caused by Evelyn's actions, my relationship with Isabella is straightforward and honest. There's no deceit involved. Yet Evelyn seemed unable to see the difference, which only highlighted the vast disparity in our values and current life paths. This confrontation was a stark reminder of why maintaining distance from Evelyn was necessary for preserving my peace and happiness. I reached my limit with Evelyn after that confrontation. In a moment of frustration, I told her I never wanted to see her again. Calling out her selfish behavior over the years, she just laughed it off, but what happened next was far from funny. A few days later, Isabella's flower shop was vandalized. Someone left a note that simply read, "Leave him." It wasn't hard to figure out who might be responsible, especially given Evelyn's recent behavior. Unfortunately, there were no cameras at Isabella's shop to capture the incident, but I was adamant that we couldn't just let this slide. I encouraged Isabella to file a police complaint against Evelyn based on what had happened. Isabella was naturally hesitant about getting involved in a legal battle, but I felt it was necessary to stand firm. I decided to confront Evelyn myself. I called her over, and in front of our children, I laid out everything. I made it clear how serious I was by threatening legal action if she continued to cause trouble for us or for Isabella. It was not something I wanted to do in front of the kids, but Evelyn had already tried to manipulate the situation by blaming me for our failed marriage in front of them. I felt it was important to assert boundaries firmly and show that her actions would have real consequences. This was about protecting our peace and making it clear that harassment and manipulation were unacceptable. The confrontation with Evelyn was intense, but it solidified the children's support for me, allowing them to express their long-suppressed feelings about the situation. They were well aware of the impact Evelyn's actions had on their childhood and were frustrated to see her playing the victim and blaming me for our broken marriage. Since that day, about a month ago, Evelyn hasn't shown up again, which has brought some much-needed peace. In the aftermath, I apologized to Isabella for the trouble caused by Evelyn's actions and helped her get her shop back in order. This experience brought Isabella and me even closer, reinforcing the bond we share based on mutual respect and support. The children, seeing how well Isabella and I get along, have playfully suggested that I should marry her before they head off to college. However, both Isabella and I are on the same page about not wanting to marry again. We have a loving relationship but have chosen not to express those deeper feelings formally or change our current dynamics. We both value our independence and the simple happiness we find in each other's company without the formalities of marriage. I'm content with where life has brought me. Being a father to my 2 children and a supportive partner to Isabella is fulfilling. It's a life that feels right, without the complications of marriage, and I cherish the simplicity and joy it brings.